Mr. Chairman and members, I thought today's markup was going to be about legislation that actually facilitates capital formation. And while I understand what is being said about 1675, it really doesn't have much to do with that goal. Instead, this bill really does restrict the amount of information that a private company must provide to an employee in the event they're compensating that employee with stock. If a private company provides more than $5 million worth of compensation in the form of stock over a 12-month period of time, the company must make relatively simple disclosures to that employee, including 2 years of financial statements, which don't even need to be audited, and information about the risk associated with investment in the securities. Last year, when we considered it, this legislation would have raised the threshold to $20 million. Well, I suppose that my friends on the opposite side of the aisle understood that a 400% increase is just a high limit that was biting off more than they can chew. But even at $10 million, the fundamental concerns still remain unaddressed. Professor Gabaldon, in her recent testimony before the subcommittee, expressed opposition to the bill, stating that employees deserve no less protection than investors, may be more susceptible to suggestion, and may be at a disadvantage compared to other minority shareholders who may receive more information pursuant to other exemptions. Professor Bullard echoed similar concerns in his testimony before the subcommittee and noted that to take advantage of the bill, an issuer would have at least $34 million in total assets. Such minimal disclosures couldn't be viewed as too burdensome for these companies. He also expressed concern that H.R. 1675 only encourages employees to own more of their employer's stock, exposing them to concentration risk in retirement accounts. He recommended that if Rule 701 is going to be changed, we should be promoting diversification and encouraging offerings that increase the number of employee shareholders. This suggestion, in particular, seems to address the concern management of Wegmans raised with me and my staff. Now, some proponents of the bill note that disclosure by companies of this information to employees runs the risk that confidential information will be leaked to competitors.
Will the ranking member yield?
I understand that concern, but we already have an effective mechanism to address it: non-disclosure agreements. Such agreements protect the company, but they do not deny employees the right to understand the worth of or the risk associated with their compensation, as H.R. 1675 would. Finally, Section 502 of the Jobs Act makes it easier for privately held companies to remain private by exempting employees who receive stock as a result of a compensation plan from the count on holders of record, among other provisions. Because the Jobs Act allowed companies to stay private longer, if not forever, I'm concerned that we would be enabling companies to encourage overinvestment by employees in a company that they cannot value and that may never permit them to sell except back to the company. I continue to oppose the bill. I respect my colleagues and their discussion about the company being private, but I do not believe that this does anything to protect the...
Will the ranking member yield?
Yes, I'll yield.
Thank you. So 3 points. I think the first thing is, if this was a good idea in 1988, it's still a good idea today because we're really not changing anything. We're simply just adjusting the levels for inflation. And across the 90s, several recommendations said that this kind of adjustment should be made. So we're really not changing the fundamental thrust of Rule 701. The other things is companies will simply make a decision not to give the stock if they're required to disclose. That will clearly be the decision they made, and that doesn't seem to help either side. And then thirdly, and very quickly, if this diversification question is intellectually interesting, but I'm not sure it's practical, because for many of these employees, this is the only equity securities they have. So you can't force someone to diversify if they have no other equity investments other than the stock in the company.
Time of the gentleman has expired. Before